Okay, everybody, welcome to the Collecting the King show. We're back again, and this is episode 14, and this one is called Find Out What's Happening. And I've tried to always have a song title related to the subject, and the subject today is Elvis on cassette tape. Now, as you know, Joe Tunzi was on our show way back when, I think one of the first 3 or 4 episodes, and he was on the show, and he has a book coming out, which still hasn't come out yet, and I don't know why. But it's all about Elvis on cassettes and on tapes, on 8 tracks. So here's the funny thing about it. Like when Joe was on the show, I sort of like became fascinated with cassettes. I don't know why, but I started looking at them. I thought, these are kind of cool. When you were younger, you stayed home in your room, you played your records, right? Then you became a teenager, and you can't take your records with you. So what do? You buy it on cassette, right? So I remember buying the very first cassette I ever bought was Moody Blue, okay, which I mentioned in a previous show. And that's kind of where it started. And I remember being fascinated with cassettes back then. You know, I thought they were really cool because I would go to a place called Hegwish Records. It used to be in Calumet City, not far from where I lived at the time. And you walk in and there's these walls filled with 8 tracks and cassettes. And of course I would go to the Elvis section, and here's all these great Elvis cassettes. And I bought them for convenience. I think basically, like Joe and I had said in our interview, because you're driving a car and it's easy to pop it in and listen to it that way. So my cassettes were limited. I think I only bought about maybe a dozen over the years. But and then I went back to vinyl when I became a professional DJ. So let's kind of talk about that a little bit. All right. As I said, since Joe Tunzi was a guest on the show promoting the next book about Elvis on tapes, I found myself becoming more and more fascinated with cassettes and began researching them. What started out as a curiosity turned into a collecting obsession. I now have over 100 cassettes in my personal collection, and it keeps on growing. So let's talk about what I found so fascinating about cassettes that made me want to start collecting another format of Elvis. Now, I don't know if I could do this, folks. I'm going to try to do this. This is just a sample of my cassettes. All right? And what's funny is when I first got these, let me pull them over here. Okay. When I first got these, or started collecting cassettes, I only had like 3. And then all of a sudden, I went on eBay, and I started looking, and, I would remember one of the 12 cassettes that I had gotten when I was younger. And I thought, let's see, I had Moody Blue, I had Raised on Rock. So any one that I remembered that I actually had bought at the store, I got it off eBay. Okay. So then I decided, well, okay, I'm just going to keep going. And I don't know why, but I kept going. Probably because cassettes on eBay are not that expensive. They're cheaper to get. I mean, but it depends, and we'll get into that later. There are some very valuable cassettes, and some of them I have in here, but most of them average about $10. Okay, you can find some for $5 or $6 to $10. Okay, with shipping $3, so you're talking about $13 a cassette on eBay, and there's other places too. Sometimes, and in certain cases here, I found maybe as many as 10 cassettes for $20. And I just bought them. Then you look through them all and you make sure that they're all workable and stuff. And we'll talk about that too in a minute. And then you just add them to your collection. Of course, I've got doubles and triples, and of course I'll end up selling those down the road somewhere. But I didn't pay a lot for them, so I'm not going to charge a lot for them. So anyway, this is only part of my Elvis collection. And what I did was, and you're not going to be able to see it too well here, I went through the catalog just like his albums, okay? Elvis's first LP was the 1254, then the second was the 1382, and then I think the next thing was Loving You or the Christmas album or whatever. So what I did was I went through the catalog, and every cassette you see here is in the order in which it was released, okay? So I started off with the early ones and then kind of just kept going until I got to the newer cassettes here. Like a good example of that would be this one here. I'll put it right here. This one here is from the double features, which came out in the 90s, believe it or not, and we'll talk about that as well. I kept them in order according to their release dates. We covered a lot of the history of the cassette and 8-track in earlier episodes, so I'm not going to go over the origins of how tapes were made again, okay? However, I do want to start off by talking about when the first RCA cassettes were introduced to the buying public, which was in 1969, when about 15 titles were released. And I'm going to show you a poster here, if I can get this. This is a reproduction of an original RCA cassette poster that they sent out to record stores, okay? This was the first time that RCA had decided they were going to do cassettes. So as you can see, there are 15, I believe 15 titles. Yeah, 15 titles, okay, of which I was able to find approximately 10. These are the most sought after cassettes. Here's an example. This is Elvis's Golden Records, and this is on that list behind me. Okay, this is one of the originals. Now, here's how you can tell it's an original. Number one is the back. If you'll notice, the case is cut in a certain way where it's trimmed, on the corners. The corners are trimmed off, and it goes across. And then the titles and everything are placed, perfectly across so that you can see them. The main way you could tell it's the very first one are the paper labels. RCA put a paper label on the cassette the same way that they did with LPs. All vinyl records have a paper label that's just kind of pressed on the vinyl. I don't know if it's glued or whatever, but that's what they did with records. They never, actually printed on the vinyl itself. But this is how you could tell it's a first pressing, which means this came out in the 60s. Almost all of the ones in the 60s and early 70s came out with paper labels, okay? And as you can see, the RCA Victor logo is in red. Now, a lot of them had these kind of cool inserts here. When you open it up, there's like a little bonus picture of Elvis, which is kind of weird. But, I mean, it has absolutely nothing to do with anything else. I mean, you can literally just cut it off and put it in your wallet or something. So in some ways, it's almost like a bonus photo. So as time went by, more and more cassettes were made, and sometimes there was kind of like a second release of cassettes, okay? And in the second batch of releases, what they did was they got rid of the paper label. So I'm going to show you an example of that. Now here is Elvis's Golden Records, Volume 2. This came out in the 70s, right? So what they did was they got rid of the paper label, and if you'll notice, it now has it's just printed right on the plastic. So apparently the paper label got old, and I noticed that through the years, like when I saw cassettes, one of the things I hated about it was the paper label would get wet, or it would get moisture or something from being in a car, and then it would warp. So I guess maybe what happened was RCA said, you know what, let's just see if we could print it right on the cassette. And bang, that's what they did. So the next releases that came out on cassette, the print was on the actual plastic itself. Okay. Another thing I wanted to note too is I was mentioning this before about making sure the cassette is in good condition. I remember I got some off of eBay, like a group of 10, like I mentioned, and when I got them, there's this little thing in here, which is a little sponge-like thing, okay, and it's in the middle, and when the tape, it's the thing that actually the heads of the recorder or the player go up against this thing, and that's where it picks up the sound as the tape goes through. So you always got to check and see if that little piece of sponge is in there. If it's not, the cassette's totally worthless. So I have to admit, there have been a few times that I bought some and those things weren't in there, and I just threw them in the garbage because they're really no good. So that is what the second group, or the second set of releases, that's what RCA did next, was print them right on the label. This doesn't mean that these are not first releases. This is still the first release of Elvis's Golden Records Volume 2, okay? It's just that it's the first release with the print on the plastic. Now, it doesn't mean these haven't come out other ways. They have. There's been reissues. There's been reissues of everything on cassette. So we'll go over some of those in a minute. I wanted to show you a couple, like, for example, this cassette is clearly on the poster, and this is GI Blues, and this is one of the very first ones that I saw on eBay, and I saw it had the paper label, so I went ahead and got it right away. And again, here you can see the paper label on here, right here. Ooh. Okay, so you have the paper label with the red, okay, and these are kind of cool too, because the inserts are interesting, because look, here they put a little GI Blues like plug for the movie on here. Like I showed you the other one that had the picture from like In the Ghetto, the picture sleeve 45 picture. But here they put this little promo for GI Blues. Kind of interesting. I know that in 8-tracks, the early 8-tracks, they actually put bonus photos, like little mini bonus photos in with the 8-tracks, and they were pretty cool. This went on for quite a while. I mean, if I continue to look here, I can tell you, like, here's another early one, and I think this is on the poster, and this is Elvis for Everyone. This is cool because this one's sealed, and I bought it off eBay, okay, but it's an original. I'm sure it's got the paper sleeve and everything. But I think I paid like $20 for this, and I had to bid. I mean, people were fighting over it. It started really low. It was like $5. It went up to $8, went to $9. Then I went to 15, and then I said, screw it. I think I put $25 in there, and I finally won. Sealed cassettes from the 60s are hot. If you could find one. Now here, I'll show you one, for example. We're talking about ones that are worth a lot of money. This is, I'm going to show you a cassette I paid $84 for this cassette. 84. All right, but here's why. It's Double Trouble. And this record was deleted off of RCA's catalog really fast. So Double Trouble, of course, had reissues in the late 70s. After Elvis died, there was some reissues of it. But it was deleted pretty quick. It was not a very popular album, okay? So to even find it on cassette is like, what? It's almost impossible. And not only that, but it's sealed. This sucker's sealed, all right? And here's the sticker says $6.99. So that's how much a cassette went for back then, was $6.99. I remember when I saw this, I also saw Speedway, and I also saw Clambake, and I kind of went nuts, and I'm like, oh man, I got to get these soundtracks. Because you know what, folks, if you're a collector of Elvis, you know that the majority of his rare, valuable stuff is the movie stuff. The movie albums all have posters and stickers, and some of the movies didn't do well, and because they didn't do well, they didn't sell, and if they didn't sell, they were harder to get as time went by. So this, I started off bidding. I knew right away that it was going to go high. So I think I put like $40 on it right away. And bang, I got outbid. Then I put $60. Bang, again. And I'm like, are you kidding me? But it just went on and on until I finally got it at $84. So I can't believe that I actually paid $84 for a cassette, but I did. Here's another one that is on the poster, and this is Elvis in Memphis. And again, I think this was the one that really propelled the cassettes, because when this one came out, this album came out, that's when all the cassettes came out around the same exact time. Now here's something interesting. Sometimes when you saw the cassette in the store, they would be like this. So you would look down the list, just like on my cassette thing I have here, and you could see the titles. But every once in a while, they didn't have room, so they did it this way. You probably can't see it. That's okay. I'll see if I can take a picture or zoom in. Okay, here's On Stage. Here's On Stage. And here's an example of, this is not an original. If you find the original, it has a paper label, but this is a reissue. And the first way you could tell it's a reissue is the UPC code. All right, UPCs are a definite way of knowing that you've got a reissue, except for with some exceptions. By the time we got to the 80s, UPC codes were on record albums too. So about 1982, I think, around that time, Elvis, I think maybe This Is Elvis, the album in 1980 came out. Around the 80s, they started putting UPC codes on the records. So this doesn't necessarily mean that this is not an original. However, we all know that On Stage came out back in the 70s, so there's got to be a paper label of this one. I don't have it, and I'm still looking for it. I'm still trying to collect all the originals. And also what they did was they changed the cases. Because in the case, if you look here, you'll see the case is straight across instead of that little cut, because it has a trim cut here and trim cut here. This one is actually straight across. Okay, so this is a newer case. So I'm thinking that this probably came out in the 80s or 90s. Here's Elvis, That's the Way It Is. Again, you'll see the back has the cut. So we're again talking about an original. And That's the Way It Is was released in 1970. So you can see into the 70s, the paper sleeve, the paper labels were still there. Here's another example of a reissue. I just saw this online today, as a matter of fact. The original one of this does not have the UPC code in the front, which is very strange. I mean, when I was researching cassettes, I noticed that the UPC code is usually on the back, okay? But for some reason, here it is on the front. It has the old case. So I don't know what was going on here. This probably is an 80s issue. That's what I would think. And of course, I try to use, all the years of experience I have, dealing with Elvis records and various labels and reissues, and try to apply that logic to cassettes to see if I could make some sense. So to me, this is very strange. I would say that this is probably in early 80s, around the time that they decided to put UCP codes, and they didn't change the back yet. So the back cover, the back is still the same, and they ended up putting it at the bottom, which I think looks crappy, but what can you do? Here we go, Love Letters from Elvis on cassette. I think I paid about $20, $25 for this. But I mean, it's great. I mean, it's got a great cover, and it's still sealed. Everything, again, same kind of cassette thing. So inside, when this album came out in 71, so this has got to be paper label for sure, okay? But I like the cover. It's kind of interesting where they took the artwork and they kind of separated the artwork from the album, and then they put Love Letters from Elvis down below. And those of you who are collectors know that the Love Letters logo is in a part of the graphic. And I don't know, it's just kind of cool that they separated it. Another tough one to find was Raised on Rock. This one, first of all, was, in my opinion, one of Elvis's weakest albums. Not very impressed with it, never was. I remember, if you remember, Johnny B and I were talking about this album, and I remember John saying, well, when he first went out and got it, it's called Raised on Rock, so he's thinking, it's going to be a kick-ass album, man, rock and roll, rock and roll. And then you get shit like Sweet Angeline, and I'll Take You Home Again, Kathleen, or whatever, some of these really wimpy kind of songs, and you're like, Elvis, what the hell? I think he's got 2 rock songs on this, and that's it. But anyway, still a very hard cassette to find. You can't find it. Wow, I didn't see. Now this is why you got to look at these things, folks. Someone ripped off the picture. The picture's gone. What the hell? And I was so excited about getting this too. Remember that picture thing I showed you where, there's a little flap there with GI Blues or whatever? It's gone. You can see it's been cut. Oh, well, I guess I'm going to have to search for Raised on Rock now. Well, at least oh no! The sponge thing is crooked. Doggone it. The sponge thing is crooked. It's in there, but this one's defective. So, folks, that's why you got to really look at these suckers when you get them, especially from eBay, to make sure you didn't get screwed. Okay, so let's see. Let's look at something else. All right, here's some interesting things. Again, we're talking about reissues, all right, because we're kind of moving up in the years. And here's a reissue of Elvis Today. And this is actually really nice. I mean, I've seen the original, what it looks like. This one's really cool. They kind of put the Elvis Today at the top, redesigned the cover so that the cover sticks out differently than the other one, the original does. And it is got the printing on the label again, all right? But this time, you'll notice it has Nipper. It has, where's Nipper? Is he on there? Yeah, on this side, yeah. You'll notice Nipper, the Nipper dog is on there, and so is a round RCA with the lightning bolt, which is the old RCA label from the 50s and from other countries. But this is kind of cool. According to this came out, it says 1975, but I know this came out much later because it has the UPC code on it, on the back, right there. Okay, and it is the straight across thing. Plus, you know, another thing with these cases is they're clear. And then here's Elvis Good Times, and you can see the same exact thing. All right, there's Good Times, pretty much the same cover. All right, they did do a little bit of changing of the graphics. Okay, but then again, straight across on the back with the UPC code on the back and a clear case. So when you start seeing stuff like this, you know now you are now getting stuff from the 90s. Okay, because even in the 80s, they still had these cases done a certain way. Our Memories of Elvis, which came out in 1979, again, very strange how the cases changed. Because here is a straight case in the back, and this has got to be 79 because the tape has got the print right on the cover or on the plastic, and then there's the RCA logo in red. So, you know, I guess just like anything that you collect, when you get into collecting, whether it's records or whatever, there's always these things you find out and you discover as you go through it. So what I'm going through now is just trying to figure out what were the very first pressings, or not pressings, first releases, reissues, etc. throughout the years. Because another thing that a lot of people don't know is that, and let's see, I wrote it down here, I should make a little note. What many people may not know is that even though RCA stopped pressing vinyl in the early 90s in favor of producing CDs, cassettes actually continued to be produced. They kept going. By 2002, production of cassettes came to a temporary halt, and even though CDs became the new normal, even they were taken over by the digital format, which is the cloud. I still don't understand why people collect and put shit in thin air. I don't get it. You know, I talk to friends that I got all of Elvis's albums. Yeah, where are they? Well, they're in the cloud. Oh, well, you must have fun looking at the covers then, don't you? So anyway, I mean, that was half the fun of it, wasn't it, back then? Was getting the record and looking at the cover and then looking at the pictures of Elvis and the songs and sometimes the lyrics. Yeah, modern technology. So anyway, the big thing that a lot of people don't know is that the cassettes went on. And I don't really have too many here, but here's a perfect example, and I've showed this in a previous show too. But here's an example of, this is like Elvis, one of Elvis's latest albums. This came out about 2 years ago, all right? And this is called Where No One Stands Alone. This is the one where Elvis did the duet with Lisa Marie. And here it is, folks, on cassette. Produced 2 years ago in, what 2020 or 2019, somewhere around there. And it's still sealed, it even has a sticker. So cassettes never really stopped. In 1997, I'm pretty sure it was 97, and if not, you can correct me, there was, for the anniversary, one of the big anniversaries of Elvis's passing, QVC put out a film can, okay, which was made out of metal, and the film can came cassettes or compact discs. Now, you had to get it through QVC, It had a bunch of like bonus photos and stuff, and it was a really cool package. Came in a box. It was a film can, but they had cassettes that came out too, and everybody thought that was so weird because by this time, compact disc had taken over. So here, all of a sudden, you get 4 cassettes inside this thing. Well, to tell you the truth, the cassette one is the one everybody's looking for now. I mean, I've seen it go on eBay for as much as $100. You know, the compact disc one was very common because everybody wanted it, but for it to be on cassette, I think people weren't buying it to play it. You know, they were buying it to collect. You know, it's just like anything else that you collect. You don't necessarily have to listen to it, but you got it in your collection. So this is actually one of 4 cassettes that came inside this double features movie can from QVC. We talked about the first releases being on white paper labels. We talked about the second releases where they're printed directly onto the plastic. We talked about reissues with the UPC code. Okay. We talked about the 2 different plastic case, or 2 or 3 different plastic case designs. Okay. Then unique packaging was one thing I wanted to talk about. And here's some cassettes that I thought were really cool. This is Return of the Rocker. They did a horizontal design. I mean, usually most cassettes are like this, right? But here they actually took the album cover and design and made it different for the cassette. I think that's cool. If I see it with an unusual cover like this, I get it. The Great Performances is another one that I like quite a bit. And what they did was they basically took the album cover, put the gold across the top and the picture down below, but they just reconstructed it so it fits the cassette. Another example of a cover, again, that's just very unique, and I had to pay a lot for this cassette, by the way, is Elvis's Greatest Hits Volume 1, which is an oddball release anyway, because if you remember, when it came out on vinyl, everybody thought, why is there an Elvis Greatest Hits Volume 1 when there's Elvis's Gold Records 1 through 5? What do you need a Greatest Hits for? What the hell? But anyway, look at this cover. What they did was they took the title off of the cover and just put that great shot of Elvis with the mic. The Memphis record, this is another unique design, and since we're looking at designs, they did it again. They did a horizontal design where they took the album cover and which this is really like only half of the album cover, right? I mean, the album cover actually goes down to here if you want the complete album cover. I think the title at the top is the same because it's supposed to look like a newspaper article. This album came out in the 80s, so the UPC is probably normal. But I had to remember the vinyl logic, which is UPCs started going on vinyl in the 80s. So when you see them, they're obviously 80s or later. Elvis in concert, I still think this is funny because it says twin pack. I'm lost. Twin pack what? There's only one cassette in here. What the hell is a twin pack? What's twin about this, RCA? I don't get it. Okay, so anyway, but again, you could tell it's original. And this came out in 77, okay, right after Elvis died. So you can clearly see that the paper label is on there. But here's something unusual, and I just noticed this myself. There's screws on this thing. Do you see that? There are 4 screws on this cassette, so you can actually take this sucker apart. Well, not that I didn't. I mean, back in the old days, you know, when your cassette got stuck in the car, right? You're driving and the tape gets stuck. You know, what do? You go and you I used to take like a butter knife and I would heat it up, right? And then I would take the butter knife and I'd run along the part of the cassette, you know, the middle, and then I would separate the cassette, right? Carefully put the tape back in, roll it back in, put it back together, and then I would heat up the knife and melt the plastic back. I'm serious. I used to do that. But that was the only way you could repair a cassette. Until now this one has screws. So you just go in here and open up the screws and you can save it, you know. This is a double pack. This is actually 2 albums on one cassette. And they did not do this very often, folks. As a matter of fact, I'm kind of sure that there aren't that many of them. Okay, so this is from Elvis in Memphis. No, this is from Memphis to Vegas, Vegas to Memphis, on one cassette. And you can see the cover. It looks pretty cool. It has both, both album covers on the front. Okay, and then it's pressed with black ink on the cassette part. Okay. This one is unusual because I'm not really sure. I'm pretty sure this is an original. Okay, although technically speaking, this should have a paper label on it because this album came out in '69 or '70. Well, no, it was '69. So technically speaking, it should have a paper label, but it doesn't. So again, you just try to apply the logic to it and say, well, maybe it just didn't come out that way, because RCA didn't always do everything, perfectly each time so that we knew everything definitively. I mean, look at Moody Blue. We're still trying to figure out Moody Blue. As a matter of fact, I just got an email from a guy, and we were talking, and, he was telling me that he has a black vinyl Moody Blue, and he said his black vinyl Moody Blue is etched in the trail off. And if you remember, we were talking about the first pressings of Moody Blue on blue were etched in the trail off, etched numbers, and that the later ones were stamped. And I have a black vinyl Moody Blue that's stamped, and I have a regular Moody Blue that's stamped. Okay, so I was assuming that meant that that's the order of which they were made. The originals were hand etched. The second ones were stamped, and then the final one was stamped too because they went back to black vinyl in the 80s. But this guy, I can't remember his name. I think his name's Mark, maybe. I don't know. Sorry. But he mentioned that, he checked his black vinyl and it's etched. So now, who knows? RCA just did whatever the hell they wanted to do, and, we as collectors just have to sit there and speculate why. But I don't know if this Moody Blue thing's ever going to be solved. But we're getting there, folks. It's getting there. Okay, so we talked about unique packaging. Now here's another thing. I don't know why they did this, but for a short period of time, and I just won a couple off eBay today. So there is not. I don't have anything to show you, but I will show you a couple pictures. For a short period of time, I think it was in the 90s. If you remember, there were these, when the compact discs were coming out, they were coming out in cardboard covers. And you would look at it, and they were called environmentally friendly cardboard covers. So they were trying to get rid of plastic or something. So there were several, I remember compact discs that came out that had these, they were on cardboard covers, and they were like slip covers or whatever. Well, apparently they did it with cassettes. Now, what I'm trying to find out, and I hope to find out in the future, is when these cardboard, cassettes came out, because their cassettes are literally in a cardboard box. It opens up and it closes, okay? And I don't know why or when, because that whole economy or that whole environment control thing happened in the 90s, I'm pretty sure. So maybe these cassettes came out in the 90s and they were in cardboard. I don't know. Kind of strange, but I don't know. So there were some like that, and they are considered collector items. I've noticed that, the ones that I'm bidding on are, I'm fighting against a couple people to get them, but I don't think they're going to go for a lot of money. But they are definitely unique as far as collecting is concerned. In 1991, Collector's Gold came out, and it was a cool set. I mean, it came out as a special 3 LP set in the United States, but it was limited to, I don't know, only 3,000 copies or 5,000, I can't remember, but it was a lot less. I mean, even though if they put 5,000, there were a lot less than that. It came out in 1991, and it was only available in certain stores. I think in Nashville, Tennessee is where I found my copy, or a few. But then they released it, commercially, and here we go. They did it on cassette. So it was a 3-album set, but look at this. This is a 3-cassette box, which is kind of cool. This is very similar to this other thing I told you about, the double features that came inside the can. Okay, but here's the 3 cassettes. And they all have the content of what the albums have as well. So it's a 3 LP box set, so a 3 cassette box. This is Elvis's greatest like gospel music, and of course there's been many compilations of his gospel stuff, but this is probably one of the best, Amazing Grace. The compact disc looks a lot like this. It's about this size and everything, okay? So if we pull this out, this is kind of neat. It comes in a little box type thing here. You see that? So the cassettes kind of slip into this thing here. All right. And again, you can see these are the newer cassettes because of the back design of the plastic. And for those of you diehard collectors who love, you know, their stickers, all right, this has a great purple sticker on it that is really cool and has the contents. These are called hype stickers, folks. I'm sure a lot of you collectors already know that, but that's the hype sticker. And usually if I find something with the hype sticker, I keep it. And they put hype stickers on cassettes too, by the way. The other thing I wanted to talk about is the bigger box sets, okay, which are, again, picking up popularity in the collectibles market. A Golden Celebration, for example, which is the gold box. We call it the gold box. It came out in, I don't know, 85, 87, I can't remember exactly. But it came out in the 80s. That came out on cassette, which was kind of cool. You know, you could buy the LP version. It came out on vinyl and on cassette. And just lately, I noticed on eBay that the cassette one is selling now. I mean, there was a time when you could go walk into a half-price bookstore or something and find the cassette box with all the, you know, the bonus features and everything inside, the pictures, and all the cassettes for like 15 bucks. Well, those days are gone, folks. For some reason, cassettes are picking up in popularity, and those box sets are now heading up to 40 bucks, or almost the original price that they were when they first came out. Same thing applies to the silver box, okay, which is Elvis, Aaron, Presley. That has cassettes too, and for some reason that's the coolest. And the cassettes are in these little silver boxes that says Elvis, Aaron, Presley, tape 1, 2, 3, 4, and very cool. I don't know how many box sets there are where the cassettes were released, but I know all of the major box sets, and you know the ones like the Elvis Presley story, and some of the ones that came out in the 70s after Elvis died. There were definitely 8-tracks made of those box sets, and I would imagine some of them have cassette versions as well. They take up so much room. I mean, even in my LP collection, I don't carry box set. I have very few box sets, just because of the fact that they just take up a lot of space. But the ones I do have are the Golden Celebration and Elvis, Aaron, Presley in the silver box. Definitely have those two. Wrapping things up on cassettes, I basically wanted to say that I think the value of cassettes today and in the future, just as with vinyl, you need to know what to look for. But I think cassettes are going to take off. You know, not just because I'm collecting them, but, you know, I think they're at that price range where if you're a collector, you can actually start collecting cassettes and come up with as many as I have, you know, 100 or more, and not spend that much money on them, except for the more difficult ones like Speedway and Double Trouble and Clambake or whatever. But I think they're collectible, and I think they're fun to collect because they're not expensive. It's kind of cool going into an antique mall or an old record store and, you know, just checking out cassettes. I mean, my wife is now, my wife collects Paul McCartney. And as you know, in the last show, I showed a couple of the McCartney albums on colored vinyl. And you know, I start collecting Elvis. So what does she do? She starts collecting Paul McCartney cassettes. So now we're trying to find out the first issues of McCartney cassettes, which were on Apple. And then the later ones were Capitol, and that later ones were Columbia, you know. So it's fun, and I think cassettes in general are going to go up in value, and I think more and more people are collecting them now because they're so hard to get. And that's what I have to say about the future of cassettes and Elvis on cassette. It's Elvis's birthday. Happy birthday, Elvis. He would have been 87, folks. Do you believe that? 87. He's been dead for 40-something years. Holy cow. But anyway, I wanted to thank Michael Staskis for being our special guest cameraman today. So, Michael, thank you very much for pressing the button. Okay, just a reminder, let's not forget, don't forget your inquiries and want lists. Send them to Collecting the King Gmail, all right, for pricing, shipping, and payment details of over 1,000. We have over 1,045 CDs, albums, all kinds of stuff. And we are slowly getting to answering the emails. You may have noticed some of you have sent me emails. And recently I got sick. So unfortunately, I was in the hospital and I wasn't able to answer everything. But now I'm back. I'm feeling great. Everything's cool. And you're going to start seeing all the emails come back with everything as far as what we have in stock and your want lists. I got them. I'm going to go through all this stuff and get back to you very soon. So keep in touch. Also, please subscribe to the channel. I see all these YouTube shows where there's like 5,000 people that watch the YouTube channel or watch the person's show, and all the person ever does is go, "Here's the new Elvis record. I hope you'll like it." And that's it. And the guy's got 3,000 people that watch this guy. I'm like, what is this? And I try to be creative. I try to, do something interesting. So, if you like what I do and you like the information and everything that's going on here, please subscribe to the channel. It's real easy. Just click on that sucker. I'll continue to try and answer as many emails and comments as I can. And you'll notice after the last show, I did that quite a bit. And I appreciate all the collectors out there who are contributing additional information regarding things that we talked about, like the Moody Blue album and this and that. And if you have anything about cassettes that I've covered that I might have missed, let's talk about it, because it's a fun thing to collect, and I really enjoy it, and maybe you might too. Okay, so one final thing, I wanted to just give a little shout out to this, because I did show it just for a moment here. This is awesome, guys. I mean, I don't know if you've gotten your copy yet of Potluck, the Potluck Sessions, but wow, this is fantastic. I mean, Elvis was at his super peak as a performer. The music in here, Marie's the Name of the Latest Flame is in here, Little Sister, and this has got to be, and this is my favorite of the sets that Follow That Dream has put out recently, and I think it's fantastic. So I highly recommend the Potluck Sessions from Follow That Dream. So again, thank you, everybody. Happy birthday, Elvis Presley. 87 years old you would have been. We miss you, and I'm so happy that you were alive and you were a part of my life. I am Robert Alaniz. This is the Collecting the King show, and we are out of here.